is Kimber. I am a 33-year-old trans man. Just going to say real quick about the trans man thing, because sometimes that seems to confuse people. I live as a man completely. I have legally and medically transitioned to male, but I was born female-bodied. So I've actually gotten to have two coming out experiences, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. I was born in Florida, and born and raised in a Southern Baptist home. And if anybody knows anything about Southern Baptists, they are not terribly friendly to gays. So I was raised to hate gay people. When I was about 12, it was accidentally released that my aunt was gay. And I love my Aunt Kathy. I loved her then, and I love her now. And then as time progressed, it became apparent to me that I liked girls. Well, I was living in a small town in Florida, and the only transgendered people that I was aware of were, female to male, trans women. Male to female, trans women. And that was usually due to gaudy, horrible, Jerry Springer-esque shows. So, it wasn't a good or caring or kind representation of trans people, and or reactions to trans people. So, I had always felt different. I very much did not like my body. It didn't gel in my mind when I looked in the mirror or when I looked down at my body. And then here comes this, oh crap, I like girls, which since at the time I was female-bodied, living as female, I was also, a lesbian. I was outed at school, actually, because after, coming out to myself and some select friends, I would go out to gay bars underage at age 16. And I was actually outed in class, in my dual enrollment humanities class, by a professor who was also gay, and I was a sarcastic kid. I was smart-mouthed, sarcastic kid, and I was giving him lip, and he called me Super Dyke. By the end of the day, everyone knew. And everyone was not happy about it. And it got to a point where I hated going to school, which actually says a lot because I really love school. I love learning. Sometimes I often wonder, where I would be at now had I gone to school more. I did graduate, but what I did is I skipped school a lot, and if I actually had to go to school, I did as much as possible to make sure that I was not mentally there. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So there was that, and then it became apparent that at church that, I was gay. So I had to deal with that. So the usual annual sermons that the pastor would do about, gays are going to hell, gays are evil, gays are bad, I swear, I feel like it amped up to at least once a quarter, if not more. And I did not feel a lot of love from, what would you call them, fellow parishioners. And I did not feel a lot of love at home. I only lived with my mom at the time, and, she would cry all the time and talk about how I was going to hell, and she would stay up late nights vomiting and then come in and tell me how she didn't get any sleep because she was up all night vomiting because, I'm going to hell. So I didn't feel safe at school. There were threats. My car was vandalized. My driveway was vandalized. I actually made an agreement with the teacher that outed me to be able to leave school early so that people couldn't beat me up. So that worked. I didn't feel safe at church, which I still had to go to until I was 18. And I had to go quite frequently, actually. If you know anything about Southern Baptists, you go to church all the time. So I didn't feel safe at church, and I really didn't feel safe at home. there are a few things that helped me through it. One, you know, I had my sister who lived nearby, who is still to this day my best friend. I had my aunt that I could talk to. Somebody had been through it. And I had my friends that were supportive and loving, and we still had fun, you know, like teens, kids are supposed to do. And so I was lucky in that aspect. Normally, in pretty much any normal circumstance, I would never say that this was lucky. But I've been able to take a good look at it, and I'm going to go ahead and share this, and I hope that the person that I'm talking about understands the way that I'm phrasing it, if they are to watch it. Before, you know, I came out, somebody very, very dear to me attempted suicide. Was thankfully not successful. And in those days, following weeks, months, years, I had thought about how absolutely bleak my life would be without that person. Because of how much love and fun and support they brought into my life. And so when I came out and when all of this started happening, did I feel that depressed? Absolutely. But I was lucky enough to have actually been able to be on the other side of even the very, very good possibility of losing somebody that I loved and meant a lot to me. So that was one little thing that I held on to through that whole period and process of when it would really get that dark and that bleak. My situation is a little bit unique in the sense that, you know, like I said, I'm 33. I didn't transition until I was 30. And transition's not an easy process. But you don't have to go through it alone. Just like coming out or, you know, being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, you don't have to do it alone. And I don't even necessarily mean that there have to be other, you know, GLBT people around you. I had really very, very, very few around me. And they were already out of high school when I lived back in Melbourne. But what I did have was still friends that loved me and family that loved me, regardless. So then I got to being 30, and it got to a point of, if I stay in this body any longer, life won't be fulfilling. And it came down to a point of, you know, I either do this or I kill myself. And it did become that drastic, and it did become that dire for me. I mean, I wouldn't get dressed in the light. I avoided showering because I didn't want to see my body. And I'm not going to go too far into that. So I transitioned. I had already worked where I still currently work for 8 years. So, you know, they had seen me, female-bodied, for 8 years, masculine identified, binding, yes. I'd already bought a home. I had credit cards. I had all kinds of legal documents in my former name and former gender. And it was, I either leave here or I do this. And so I transitioned. And I still work there. I've worked there for another 3 years. And I have a lot of support at work. And there are people at work, yes, that they don't get it. They don't accept it. They don't agree with it. But they still are professional. And that's the wonderful thing about getting older, is professionalism. There is no such thing in high school. And you can't rely on teenagers or preteens to be professional. However, adults, you know, are, because they have to continue to pay their bills. So you actually can have recourse if somebody says or does something. And once people realize that you are willing to stand up for yourself, they generally tend to back down. And just as a sidetrack to that, that's true in high school too, because I was a bit of a punk, a little bit of a trouble starter. So when people would say something to me, I would say something right back. I never backed down. And yes, I did leave school early, but if they did it to my face, I said something right back to theirs. I think that had a lot to do with the fact that things didn't happen to me. Maybe not. I don't know. But what it did give me is strength and pride in myself. And the ability and knowledge to fight for myself, and that I am valuable, and that somebody else does not have the right to say that about me. I've been through it twice now as a teenager, which was horrible. And I understand that, and I get that. I've also been through it as an adult, which was difficult. But I still had so much love around me. And I guess the one thing that I can say to you is, when you have those moments, think about those times that you do spend with those people that you love, that you care about, that you have fun with. Because what life is are all these tiny moments. A lot of it can be mundane or painful, but it's those tiny little moments that are strung together that really can make life fantastic. I kind of like Christmas lights. You get these tiny little things, and there's just little bright lights all together. And when you put them all up together, it makes the house look, like some kind of crazy fantasy land. And that really is what life is like when you can take a step back from it and look at it. It really does get better. I would be lying to you if I said right now that there haven't been moments in the last 3 years of transitioning that I haven't felt very depressed, very alone, and that some of this was almost bigger than I could handle. But you know what? It's not. Because I have people that care about me that will let me lean on them in the same way that I would let them lean on me. You have an amazing amount of strength, and you will continue to surprise yourself as much as others will continue to surprise you. But people surprise me all the time. People that you think would not be accepting or supportive are. And sometimes people are going to surprise you for the negative, and that's okay. You know what? It really is. So friends, family, yourself, you are absolutely amazing. We really are. All of us are. Because as soon as you find your value and you stand up for yourself, there's nothing that you can't do. There's also, in every city and every town, there's community mental health centers. That's actually where I work. Where I ended up was, for the first 7 years that I worked there, I worked in the inpatient unit for suicidal, homicidal, psychotic teens, which predominantly are suicidal teenagers. There's community mental health centers, and you don't have to go inpatient either. You can go outpatient. There are a lot of therapists that will actually do, sliding scale. If you don't feel like you can, get your parents to, support you for therapy, there are therapists that can help you out with that. When you turn 18, you get to go somewhere and you get to start your life and find your friends and your family. And when you're a teenager, you don't get to do that. You kind of got to deal with what you have. And that may not be a lot. For a lot of you, I know that it probably isn't. But there are people that are out there, that are doing the It Gets Better Project, the Trevor Project, people on Facebook, MySpace, whatever social network you use, there are people out there that have commonalities with you that will support you. So I think I may have gone over my 10-minute limit. I hope not. But it really, really does get better. I promise you. And please know that you are valuable and you are worthwhile in this world.